Welcome to 15 Minutes of Pharma. My name is Pereira, Cruz, and my partner in these conversations is Manuel Fernandes. Today, we continue with our If I Were the CEO format. Okay, so this time we look at a familiar situation in European pharmaceutical manufacturing. A company with industrial history, built by technical vision, with know-how, assets, and regulatory credibility, but the industry changes, competition intensifies, margins compress, environmental demands rise, regulatory complexity increases, investments is delayed, the portfolio becomes heavier, the system becomes noisier, and the company begins to drift. Nothing to collapse necessarily, okay, but into something more dangerous, activity without enough real value creation. So, Manuel, let me ask the basic question. So, if you were the CEO of a company like that, what would you do first?
Well, Carlos, as always, a great pleasure to be here with you in 15 Minutes of Pharma. And well, to go straight ahead to your question, I would say that I would start by facing the truth. I guess that I would avoid falling on the temptation of launching or a new growth narrative. I would avoid by all means focusing my efforts in producing a new strategy deck, and I would absolutely avoid talking too early about transformation. In my view, the first job of the CEO is to clarify the economics of the business. And this implies, answering questions such as, where is value actually being created? Where is it being destroyed? Which products and customers are really carrying the factory? Which products are only occupying capacity, management attention, and organizational energy without enough return? And how much of the apparent performance is real versus simply acceptable on paper? Because, Carlos, in many industrial businesses, surface looks better than the reality underneath. The plant is busy, revenue may still be growing, EBITDA may, still be positive, and yet the system is already drifting. Margins under pressure, planning instability, maybe even tension in what regards working capital, constant firefighting across the board, and obviously leadership stretched across, all the operational details. So, if I were in the CEO shoes, I would start with truth, because there is no other way of beginning a turnaround.
Yeah. Okay. So this reminds me something that you mentioned in previously episode about that whale curve. Companies with a lot of work, but not earning money, or so with some part of the customers they earn a lot of money, but then they lose a lot of money with the 40% of the customers, something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the first job is not to, let's say, energize the narrative, and I think we both know situations like that. Yeah. And but what you said is not energize the narrative, but is to understand the economics of the organization, right?
Exactly, Carlos. You cannot redesign a system you have not diagnosed honestly. And in business like this, one of the first places I would look is the portfolio.
So why the portfolio first?
Because in many pharmaceutical factories, they do not have a capacity problem. They really have a portfolio problem, because products accumulate or tend to accumulate over time. Some of those products were once profitable. Some were, retained because customers expect the company to supply them. Some were just kept to fill capacity, and even some others may have stayed because, well, they have always been there. So individually, those decisions may have once made sense, but collectively, over time, they can create a portfolio that consumes resources without creating enough value. And well, that is where the CEO has to be very disciplined. The hardest decision is often not how to produce a product. It's deciding whether the factory should still produce it at all.
Yeah. So that reminds me someone that I consider a lot in terms of a, a, a presentation expert. So her name is Nancy Duarte. That she has a saying that is something like, "We need to kill our darlings," but it's so difficult. Yeah. So it's like killing a sun. Killing a product is like killing a sun. So in practical terms, okay, what do you mean by this? What does that mean? Hmm?
Yeah, it means, Carlos, that we have to perform portfolio surgery. Some products just need to be discontinued. Some contracts need to be renegotiated. And well, some activities need to be reset eventually around minimum order quantities, larger batch sizes, or even revised pricing. And even some products or key starting materials with negative contribution margin simply have to go. And well, this is not a technical decision, it's an economic one. And well, it often requires leadership to just to challenge historical inheritance, because as you very well said, factories rarely fail suddenly. More often, they just drift, and portfolio drift is one of the main ways that happens.
So I I think that is a very uncomfortable work because from the outside, the factory may still look active, busy. Eh?
Yeah, it really is, Carlos, and that is precisely why it is dangerous, because most of the times activity is mistaken for value. A factory can be busy with fragmented campaigns, changeovers, low margin work, and stable demand, and and a disproportionate quality burden, and well, still look full. But fullness is not the same as economic coherence. And well, that is why one of the first priorities of the CEO is to be very clear and to separate what keeps the factory busy from what actually deserves to remain in the portfolio.
Hmm. Okay, so if the first target is the portfolio, what you call portfolio surgery. So if that is the first layer, what comes next? Okay.
I would say that the second layer, so to speak, is the organization itself, and well, here we would have to be very careful. Normally, a turnaround usually brings pressure to reduce cost, to resize the workforce, and to simplify structures. And obviously, some of that is necessary. There's no other way around. But if I were the CEO, I would never confuse right sizing with blind cost cutting, because a turnaround, in my opinion, fails when cost reduction destroys the very capability base needed for recovery. So the question we should ask is not how many people do we have. It should be do we have the right structure, the right interfaces, and the right level of autonomy for the business we want to run?
So what you're saying is that this is not just about reducing headcount, okay? So it's about rebuilding organizational coherence.
Exactly, Carlos. You need fewer ambiguities, not just fewer people.
Fewer
You need,
ambiguities. Yeah, good point. Good point. Fewer
clearer
ambiguities.
ownership,
Yeah.
better defined interfaces, more capable supervision, and less dependence on escalation for everyday decisions. And this means a more accountable autonomy. And this is one of the leadership points I care about most. I firmly believe that the role of the CEO is not to become, the chief problem officer, if you will. The role of the CEO is to really build a system that solves problem without constant dependence on one person. Execution, in my view, execution, and not only in my view, obviously, but execution is really strategy. And I firmly believe that leadership is multiplication.
So execution is strategy, you said, and leadership is multiplication. So that takes us naturally to the factory itself. Okay, so because a turnaround is not only portfolio and structure, so it's also the hardware, the operating reality. So what about that, Manuel?
Yeah, very much so, Carlos. Being the CEO, obviously, I would rationalize the plant, not just the headcount. And rationalizing the plant means, simplifying processes, reducing unnecessary operational burden, attacking setup times, understanding micro stoppages, stabilizing planning, improving maintenance discipline, digitizing where useful and meaningful, and increasing the factory's ability to run predictability. So the goal is not lean theater. The goal is to make the factory economically and operationally coherent again. And in practical terms, that often means introducing mechanisms such as, rolling forecasts, a firm short-term planning windows, single source of truth reporting, paperless records eventually, and last but not least, and this is very important in my view, stronger daily management rituals.
Okay. So what you're saying is is that the turnaround is not achieved when the organization gets smaller. Sorry.
Take your time.
Sorry. So what you're saying is that the turnaround is not achieved when the organization gets smaller, but is achieved when the factory becomes more, again, coherent. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I would say that's the right way to put it, Carlos. Smaller may happen, but smaller is not the objective. The objective is coherence, and that means a plant with less noise, with better flow, with better use of assets, with better planning discipline, and more transparent economics. Because only then can the company begin to grow on a healthier base.
Okay. So Manuel, so what do you think are the next steps in the turnaround after these three?
Yeah, I would say that after these three steps that we have just spoke about, I would say that the next step would be, prepare the organization to grow with better economics, which I would follow by developing and reinforcing a culture that supports commitment, and that just brings people wanting to go the extra mile. And on the last step, I would say that bringing in private equity just to to help or to accelerate the transformation.
Okay, so Manuel, I think that is very rich. Okay, so it's very There's a lot of material there. So perhaps that deserves a specific episode to develop those topics.
Yeah,
Don't you think
yeah.
so? Yeah, do you
I,
agree?
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree, Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Okay.
focus on these three further steps of the turnaround process
Mm-hmm.
in a dedicated episode. That's
Okay.
so many material to cover. I think that it makes perfect
Mhm.
sense.
Okay. So Manuel, thank you. And thank you to all of you for listening to 15 Minutes of Pharma. Today, in this If I Were the CEO conversation, we began exploring how a technically credible but economically drifting pharma manufacturing company can be put back on a path toward believable growth through portfolio redesign, operating discipline, uh, organizational clarity, and well, the rest we will see in the next episode. So see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Carlos. See you all in the next episode.